Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Fresh Business Thinking webinar with Lerex Technology. Today, Richard Ney, CEO of Lerex Technology, will be discussing some of the numerous ways in which prototypes and MVPs can help a startup to save time, accelerate their growth, and reduce risks in the business. This session is recorded today, and the recording will be available on freshbusinessthinking.com later on today. All attendees will receive a follow-up email after the session. I will now pass over to our host today, Roberto. Thanks, guys.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Roberto Rivero. I am an occasional angel investor and an advisor to 5 early-stage technology companies, including Lerex Technology. And this morning, I'm going to be speaking with Richard Ney, who's the Chief Executive of Lerex, and he's going to be talking to us about the importance of prototypes and MVPs in growing your business. We're going to be taking questions at the end, so please do make use of the Q&A function. Richard, good morning. Before we start, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and about Lerex?
Sure, yes. Good morning, Roberto. Good morning, everyone. About myself, I guess I'm a technologist by trade, so I still consider myself as being an IT geek. But I spent the last 10 years advising startup and scale up, and like you said, I'm now CEO for Lerex Technology. About Lerex, so we're a banking technology company. So we have 3 types of customers. We have customers that want to use payment card in their day-to-day operation. That could be, I don't know, salary processing. That could be insurance, wanting to use card for quicker disbursement and payment of insurance claim. Or that could be simply cost control. The second type of customer that we have is people that build their solution around payments, and they might want to become, the next neobank, or they might want to get a FX travel card, and they use most of our solution to deliver their product to their customers. And the third type of company might be companies that want to deliver a product, but they need the banking rails to make their product work. That would be buy now, pay later type of company. Again, we can talk about some of the latest type of payroll type companies that would want to do that. There's loads of different ways to kind of slice and dice our technology. We've circulated a paper just before this webinar explaining 16 different ways in which you can use the Lerex service to kind of boost your business and grow revenue. So there's loads of different ways in which people kind of slice and dice what we're doing.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any customer examples that you can illustrate what you said with?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the first type in wanting to kind of enhance your operation, I mean, one big company that you recognize doing that in the US is McDonald's. So they're using kind of prepaid card and payment services to automate their payroll. People that want to kind of take the whole solution, maybe rebrand it. I mean, one of our customers is ScanApp. They're an FX travel card. Their whole business proposition is that you would use that to travel and they give you cash back. Again, that's an example of people kind of using most of what we offer. And the last one, in terms of delivering a product but having banking as part of it, the customer that comes to mind is called Pull and Pay. They're a newcomer in the buy now, pay later space. They have a great new proposition around that, and they're using our technology at the back of it for some of the payments rails, basically.
Okay, thank you. So I could summarize Lerex by saying that it's a banking technology company. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And we're a technology company at heart, and technology is very important to us. I think there is another angle to that, though, where we do a lot more than that. So we already deliver the whole solution our customer needs. So we will look at day-to-day operation, compliance, customer onboarding. So through us, people can already just relinquish absolutely everything. They have absolutely nothing to do but onboard their customers. And some, leverage that more than others. It's kind of their choice what they want to do or not. So I would say we're a technology company, definitely, but with a very large operational and compliance add-on to it as well.
Okay, thank you. So today you wanted to talk to us about how prototypes and MVPs can help entrepreneurs to grow their business. What's the main thrust of your message?
I think the main message I wanted to give today is looking at other ways to use an MVP. And I'm sure most of the audience are comfortable with the term minimum viable product. And a lot of the usage has been described in trying to kind of bring a product to market. We are all familiar with example like Zappos, where it was just a very simple website and the fulfillment was done very manually. Or a solution like Dropbox, kind of going through a video to explain their product. But there are loads of other ways in which I think the MVP can be extremely useful, and that's kind of what I thought. That's what I'm quite passionate about, so I want to talk about that.
Okay, thank you. Anything in particular that prompted that thought?
Yeah, I think about 10 months ago, 12 months ago, a prospect came to us with a great idea, something we thought was really, really good. But like many entrepreneurs, a very, very small budget. And that's where we started to discuss, okay, can we bring something to market, very cost effectively? And what can we do to kind of have, a very functionality rich MVP, but at lower cost. And because Lerex had most of the technologies, was quite fairly easy for us to kind of do that for that customer, and they got on into being able to pitch that to investor and raising money.
Okay, so who was that? Who was the customer who needed to raise money?
So was Pull and Pay, which I mentioned earlier, being a buy now, pay later product. Mm-hmm. So what we did with them is we packaged some of our components very specifically to accelerate route, speed to market and decrease cost. So that's really where we started to kind of look at that solution and think, well, there's probably something to do here. If that prospect has that challenge, there might be others. And that's what kind of led our whole MVP proposition that we have today.
Okay, so tell us a bit more about that, about your MVP proposition.
Yeah, so if we look at what Lerex has, it's really three components. It's the whole kind of backend and payment rails, allowing us to make payment, create account, create card, operate card transaction, which we service through an API. So that's kind of one of those. The second component is kind of that REST API people can plug into. But we also have mobile app and website that can be very easily white labeled. So basically what we went on doing is giving people is very, very quickly, in matters of, depending on what you want, it could be a matter of days or a matter of a couple of weeks. You could have a real life, card or account to be able to use to demonstrate your proposition, to test your proposition. I think as a business, we are very entrepreneur friendly. It's probably coming from my background because I've been in that world since very early in my career, and I've always been passionate about that. So we're always very happy and excited to talk about new ideas, to kind of feel like we're part of the new nice thing, to talk to people about the challenges of bringing their product to market. And within our space, we're always happy to kind of speak to people about what can be done, and we're not afraid to kind of think out of the box to try to answer our customer needs, basically.
Okay, so you said that you with your help, Pollen Pay used the MVP to help them raise money from investors. Why do you think using a prototype it helps when raising money from investors?
Well, I think there are three reasons. The first one is the market risk, right? And a lot of the investors are going to, they don't know if your product is going to sell or not. So having an MVP and trying to kind of sell your product and get some early traction, maybe some customer commitment, waiting list, letter of intent, that is really useful to demonstrate that there is a market for your product and that you're able to get commitment. I think the second point is proving that you can get things done. Having been involved with a kind of a number of startup or scale-ups, I think in the payment space, because we're working with big names like people like MasterCard, very often investors don't believe that you're going to be able to get access to this kind of solution. If you're a one-man or two-man man and go and say, hey, 3 months down the line, I'm going to be able to issue a MasterCard card with my logo on it. Unless investors are within that space, they don't always believe you. And I think that's why for us it was important that the MVP included a live product that you could go and say, hey, here is a card, here is my sticker, here's my logo, whatever has been done, and I'm going to pay my coffee with it, and now it fits back into my ecosystem. Being able to do that live demo, I think, was a very, very big wow moment for some of the prospects. And I think a third reason is the level of engagement. It's, people want to play with things, they want to be able to see an application and kind of say, okay, I'm going to press on the button, and kind of, it's much more engaging than having a PowerPoint presentation or just talking through your ideas. Being able to show something, even if it's very, very early stage, create that level of engagement, I think, which is really useful when you're trying to convince someone.
Okay, interesting. So do you have any examples of that, of investors being drawn in by playing with something?
Yeah, I think, a good example is Brad Feld, which in his book called Venture Deals talk about exactly that subject, the fact that, so Brad Feld is an investor and a VC investor, and he talks about the fact that he much prefer being able to play with a product than having a presentation. But if you're a bit of an investor yourself, maybe I should ask you those questions. What do you think about? What do you think about that point?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's a good point. I would agree with everything you've said. Obviously, anything that the more you get involved in the conversation as an investor, the more engaged you're likely to get. And I agree with what you've said. I would add that when I'm pitched as an investor, typically the first thing that comes into my head is the market risk. Is anybody going to buy this product or this idea? And any proof points that the entrepreneur has about there being real demand are really useful. And in order to get that commitment from clients and potential clients and potential employees and other investors, you don't have to have a real product. You can gain all that by using an MVP. Something else I would add is that quite often, especially if it's a new concept, the entrepreneur will describe the opportunity to me, and I just won't get it. But typically, if it's a demo and you can see the kind of steps that a customer would take through the product and the benefits they get, then the proposition and the concept, I get it a lot more quickly, and I'm also much more able to remember it afterwards, and describe it to other people, and the other people are typically other investors or potential helpers for the entrepreneur. So yeah, very, very useful. So an MVP can be very useful in testing the market and in helping you raise money. How else can it be useful?
Couple more core way around feedback, but I guess one thing you say, which is interesting, or I would say, is also if you're saying that most people pitch you through a presentation, maybe having an MVP helps you stand out as well, right? So if investors are getting 20 pitches that day, but they've been able to play with only one or two products, I'm guessing they'll probably remember those two better. But in terms of other ways to be useful, I think feedback is really important. So we're saying, or I've seen a number of people delivering an MVP, like as per the original purpose of the MVP. But I think an important piece is feedback, is how are people going to react to that? And I think there's probably two types of feedback. There's probably a high-level feedback where you can probably speak to people and as more like a guided demo, and that allows you to kind of prove your high-level concept and have that high-level view that's it's fine, the user journeys are fine, and the most of the product is okay. But then there's another type of feedback that people sometimes ignore, which is a non-guided feedback, which is just leave your product in the hands of someone, and then you can already see how they go. And if they go and they spend, you can see from there. I've literally seen people opening stuff and go like, it's like, and you can see they spend like 10 seconds on something, not being able to, not knowing what to feel. It's a really, really useful feedback in terms of the UX and UI. I mean, obviously, there are focus group for that, but I think you don't have to do a full focus group to just put in the hand of someone and say, hey, try to do X with the product, or try to do Y, and see how they react. So, the feedback on the MVP and iterating through that feedback, I think it's critical.
All right. So market validation, raising money from investors, generating feedback. What else?
Selling, I think, whether kind of selling your products, because I think everyone is kind of trying to be nice, and generally speaking, you'll get good feedback about your product. You'll probably pitch to people that know you already. They don't want to kind of upset you too much. So I think it's very easy to have great positive feedback on things that are absolutely a market. But then when you go to sell it, it's always the same thing. Is it a problem? Yes. Do people want to solve that problem? Is it enough of a problem for me that I want to put money or time or whatever you're asking me to solve it? Sometimes the answer is no. Yeah, it's a problem, but it's a lot of little problem I deal with every day. So I think trying to sell the product and get those commitments, get those signatures on paper, that now I have to commit. And I think just doing that is going to allow you to understand what are those barriers, right? And that's really where the discussion is interesting. Is like, okay, great product, blah, blah, blah. Are you going to buy it? And I'm caricaturing here, but are you going to buy it? And then that's where the real nuggets come in. Is like, no, why am I not going to buy it, right? Is it too pricey? Does it have features? So I think again the selling bit is really, really important, because that's really where people are going to understand the barriers of growing their business.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and it's one that you don't often read about that or hear about. I used to be a product manager, and I was surprised early on how quite often the same people who told me nice things about the product idea and the product that was coming down the line later on would resist buying it, and it was only when you it was only when you tried to sell it to them and close them that they came up with the real deficiencies in the product or real requirements that they had for the product to connect to something else, or to be at a different price point or whatever. So after that I focus more on closing the sale rather than on generating, or as well as generating feedback, if you like. So anything, so selling and generating feedback, what else do you think an MVP can be useful?
Well, I mean, we can go back to their original purpose, which is really kind of getting to grip with your product and your proposition, avoiding misunderstanding within the delivery team, so making sure everyone is on the same page. The kind of the constant iteration into growing into a product that is going to make sense. So I think, yeah, very often it's difficult. I spent a lot of time, like I was saying, as a technologist building software, and the MVP is very useful to make sure we're all on the same page. So instead of, before you invest too much time into something which is going in the wrong direction, being able to use an MVP with your engineering team to make sure to deliver something, look at it, and kind of refine that. And having that something to show and discuss within the team, I think is really useful. So basically, kind of trying to preempt execution challenges and solving those execution challenges.
Okay. And any more uses?
Just trying to stretch my. Yeah, I think something which is a bit out of the box maybe, but anytime you need to sell your business, right? I think as an entrepreneur, we've always, many people are going to feel, and when I use the term entrepreneur, I use entrepreneur, kind of in the wide sense of the term. Could be a single person, but more and more what we're seeing as well is entrepreneur or intrapreneur, I think is the term, and people kind of championing their idea within a larger business, right? So it doesn't have to be a solo person, but I think the challenges are, roughly the same. But every single time you want to sell your idea, the MVP is very useful, right? We've all had to convince, entrepreneur probably has to convince their other half that they are going to invest loads of time, maybe money into some kind of idea, and having the product to be able to show to them and is really important, because I think getting that buy-in from your entourage is critical for future support. So same thing, being able to excite them about a product is really important. And like we said, it's much easier to do through an MVP than a presentation. It's probably also quicker as well, because people can do that in their own time. And it extends to partners and the team. I think, again, we always have to sell our idea and our concept to early stage partners. Maybe we are having providers that we are posing a risk to, and we need to have to convince them that we're a serious proposition. Maybe you are trying to attract a great co-founder or someone who's in the team very early stage. And let's face it, in those situations, if you're a very early stage startup and trying to attract the next big guy, you're selling to them more than they're selling to you, right? The interview process is very much reversed. And I think having that MVP is really, really useful just to create engagement. It feels more real. It feels like there is something already. It feels like you're closer to the goal rather than just talking about it and having all those questions of, yes, but are you going to be able to do it? So yeah, I think that's also very useful ways of using an MVP.
That's a very good point. I would say that first-time entrepreneurs often underestimate how much selling, in inverted commas, they're going to have to do of their company, as well as selling the actual products to actual clients. Selling the concept and the company to potential investors, employees, as you said, partners, etc. I read, I forget who the entrepreneur was, but it was someone quite famous who said that if he had to do it all over again, he would start from the pitch and work backwards from there, because if it wasn't something that he could communicate easily and convincingly, it's obviously a very difficult concept to make a business out of. So market validation, raising money, generating feedback, selling, improving product development, selling the company and your ideas. Any other ways? Is there any other ways in which MVPs can help?
I can't think of anything. I think I like to reinforce something I just touched on, but which is useful as well, which is overcoming delivery barriers. So I did talk about that, but I think that's also and throughout the life of a product, right? So it doesn't stop at the MVP. I think people think it's an MVP is finished. I think every single product, you always have more mature features than others. So you're almost always in kind of the MVP stage. And I think realizing that the MVP is not the end of the road either. It's not, the MVP might not allow you to fully sell the product. You might need something more because you might be in a competitive market where other people have already established products. So the MVP is great, and I would use it all the time to kind of refine what we're doing and make sure we're going in the right direction. But then is being able to compete, being able to market it. So there's loads more behind the MVP. But I think, I can't think of anything which we've missed. But in summary, you can use the MVP in a lot of different ways, and I'm a massive fan of the MVP. Like I said, even either for a new product or a new feature or a new area. So now I would always kind of have that MVP methodology. And then in Lerex, I think because of that passion, I'm quite proud of what we've done in terms of coming with MVP concept and allowing people to deliver a real life solution to markets, very quickly and with not that much money at all. So yeah, we have a great way to slice and dice our product depending on what people want. And the third one is, I like to say we are a very friendly company. It's something that we love to talk about. So even if you're never going to buy from us, even if you're never going to be a customer, you don't have money, you just want to kind of, bounce the ball and talk about it. We're always happy to talk about it and help people refine. Very often in those discussions, we help people refine what's easy or not. We operate in a very regulated environment. And sometimes something which is very technically can't be done for whatever regulatory reasons. So, we always try to guide people and say, okay, well, if you were to change that, it would be much easier, and now we can approach all those concepts. So, yeah, come and speak to us, and we'll just have a chat and see what we can do.
Okay, thank you. One excellent question has come in, which is, are there any dangers around working towards an MVP?
Sorry, against what?
Any dangers in focusing too much on working towards an MVP?
I think so, and I think it touched on what I've just said around the MVP is not the end goal, right? I think starting with an MVP is, I'm sure we can find, everything has pros and cons. I'm sure we can find, flaws into always starting with an MVP. But I personally really like it, starting with an MVP. But I think the danger is thinking the MVP is enough. In a lot of market, the MVP is not going to be enough, because you're going to try to compete against someone who is more mature and have more than the MVP. So that's where we start talking about, MCP and MMP, minimum compatible product and minimum marketable product. So we have those stages of saying, I have an MVP, I have my features, I'm able to demonstrate there is an interest and that I can deliver. But then I might need something else to be able to start, feeling like I can talk about the product in a wider range, right? It's not because I have a very small MVP that I'm comfortable going to the wide market and the wider audience about it, because I might look very weak compared to someone else. And then there is the kind of, at which stage do I feel like I'm on par with my competitor and I can already compete in that market? And sometimes, I've seen some product where being able to change the color of a button needed to be in that minimum competitive product because people were asking for it. It's not strictly speaking part of an MVP, but still was an important feature. So I think, yes, you can focus too much on the MVP by the fact that you can, stop too soon, basically. But on the flip side, I've seen a lot of technology businesses starting at that MCP and trying to build loads of things. And I think early in my career, I've made a mistake myself of building things which were never used. I mean, I remember doing a kind of retrospect over the last 2 or 3 years of a business. And the amount of money we had sunk in doing things, the business was successful, but the amount of money we had sunk into doing things that never got used, like literally never got used. And that's where I started to kind of think we need to sort that out somehow. It's not, it doesn't quite work.
Yeah, I guess you have to consider the situation that you're in and your competition and what your next business objective is. in order to address that. And one common question is, how much features should I put into my MVP? But yeah, without considering those things, it's kind of an impossible question to answer.
Ask your customers. That's what I would say. A lot of it is going back to, can I sell it, right? You might be building the best car ever. If no one's going to buy it, you don't have a business, right? You have a very nice product that you can play with, but you don't have a business. So ask your customer, right? What feature do you need? Do you need X, Y, and Z? And that's where the MVP is interesting, because that encourages that feedback. And sometimes there are features which don't make sense to you, but is customer absolutely wants. And sometimes equally it's very difficult to understand what the market as a whole is going to want, right? We've all been in that, I think, sometimes in that zone of building something for us, but we might not be our customers. So yeah, customer feedback is key. Always ask, always ask, always ask. What's the next feature? What do you want next? What do you think about that? Right. And yeah.
Okay. So a relevant sort of question that's very relevant to that came in, which is there a difference between an MVP and cutting corners to get to market? What's the difference between the two, in your opinion?
That's a good question. I like the term cutting corners. I use it myself quite a bit. I think that's where experience comes in. And I think I talk a lot about myself cutting corner, but knowing which corner to cut, right? And I think, once you've experienced that, that some corners you can cut because you can rectify and you're comfortable and you're in different environments. And that some other corner you cannot cut, right? I'm looking back at Lerex, anything to do with regulation, you can't cut those corners, right? So I think there is a difference. I think cutting corners is very close to the MVP, but you also need to work out your core proposition. So I'll take an example. Let's imagine that you're going to build a software which, if successful, is going to have to massively scale, right? Let's imagine you're about to process, if you're successful 6 months, 12 months down the line, you need to process 1 million messages per second or something, or piece of information per second. If you don't build your MVP with some of those principles, and maybe the MVP needs to include some performance testing, because if you get that MVP to market, but then realize that you completely need to change your infrastructure, your model, your software architecture to be able to answer your proposition, yes, the wrong corner to cut. So I think sometimes feature is also technical feature, right? If scaling is absolutely critical to the business, that should be a technical feature of your MVP. So again, knowing which corner to cut is important. So it's going to go through, again, customer feedback could be a good one, but it's also going through what you want to do as a business. So there is a lot of corner cutting in MVP, but it's thinking very objectively which corner do you want to cut and which one you can't. If it's going to be a big problem down the line to rectify it, you probably want to validate your answer now.
Okay, that's a good point. A question came in early on from Sarah Giblin, which I'll kind of paraphrase. Are you advocating one particular way of developing your MVP as opposed to another? So in her example, working with a partner to help you rather than outsourcing it to an app agency, for example. Is that your point?
No, I don't think it's the point I would make. And I think on that is very much your preference and what you're comfortable with, right? If you have the chance to be able to attract a great engineering lead or CTO or technical person, maybe as the best route is to do it in-house. Even in those circumstances, the best route might not be in-house. I think it's the whole buy versus sell, onshore, offshore, nearshore. I could talk for another hour about all those questions. I think no, the answer to the question is no. I'm not advocating one execution method compared to another. it's really kind of depend on what you're comfortable with. It's always a matter of trade-off. So, sometimes spending a bit more money to kind of free your bandwidth is better. So yeah, there's loads of things to consider, but no, I wouldn't say I advocate one method over the other. It really depends on the circumstance.
Okay, thank you. Another excellent question from Oliver. Can you talk about pricing when launching an MVP? How do you test market demand versus price sensitivity?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tricky one to do on MVP, because often a lot of the pricing is based on the features. So if we accept the MVP is not the full featured product, it's kind of difficult. For me, pricing, and I don't claim to be an expert in pricing, but for me, it's always return on investment. It's always, what value am I providing and which investment am I asking for? Might be time and investment. I think people always think it's money. It's not just money. It's the time I'm going to spend understanding your solution. Is there any integration? Do I need to train my team? Do I need to change my operational process to do that? I think to some extent, the financial investment is the easiest one to quantify. But in terms of pricing, I always try to look at return on investment. Obviously, if you have competitor in that market, you probably can use their pricing to try to help them guide you, similar products, things like that. The pricing is a tricky one. Depends as well on which market you're into. Is it a B2C, same price for everyone? You have different pricing tiers. I think different pricing tiers can work quite well in understanding what people want and don't want. I know as a business, we've changed our pricing model based on that, because we clearly saw that some people, we clearly saw the price point very quickly when talking about those pricing tiers. So yeah, there's a bunch of things you can do around pricing, but I think it's going to be more using external information than just using purely your MVP.
So to clarify, you're saying you should consider return on investment for the client.
Correct.
When you're pricing your product. Okay, so the value that your product is delivering to them. And do you think, given that the MVP by definition is something that doesn't have the full range of features that you're planning to deliver, can you use it when telling the customer what the price is going to be, or when setting the price?
I think you can use it, but you can use it in the same ways as we described. You can use it to help your demonstration, to help your sell, basically. So you can use it to help your sell. You can also be very open to the customer that, here is the MVP and here are the features. And I think that's where trying to sell is great, because you might discover that, I'm sure you will discover that stuff you thought were critical are not critical at all. People don't want it. And stuff that you think no one would want, they actually want it. So you might be in a position where you go to the customer and there is one key feature missing. Maybe you can turn that into a LOI, right? A contractual agreement. So, okay, if I deliver that feature to you, will you buy it? And here is the price at which you buy it. Maybe you can, there's whole different things you can do. Maybe the customer can start using the MVP at a lower price, and then you agree a price hike once you deliver the full-fledged version. So yes, I think the MVP will help that kind of pricing discussion, but I do think it's a different discussion.
Yeah, I was going to make the point that pricing is difficult, and I would put it in the area earlier on. We talked about the how when you're selling, as opposed to asking for feedback, you get more genuine answers, and I think especially in a B2B context, closing the sale. Also, trying to close the client at a particular price point is a much more a realistic way of getting to the right price. Because if you just ask them to give you their opinion, they will give you the lowest price they think they can get away with. And in a B2C context, there are lots of examples of people doing the same thing, but at a distance. So using A/B testing, using fake order forms, etc., in order to test demand at different price points. So another question that's come in: is there a route to releasing a digital product that doesn't involve an MVP?
if I understand the question correctly, is can you deliver something without going through an MVP phase? Yeah, yeah, you can, absolutely. I mean, MVP is still, what's it, 10, 15 years old. I mean, when I started as a developer, you know, I know I look young, but I started a while ago. When I started as a developer, there was no concept of an MVP. It was still very much waterfall. And I think, you know, agile, MVP, and lean process all kind of came up roughly at the same time. But at the time we started, we would spend a lot of time defining exactly what the product would be. Then there would be a very long kind of engineering phase and testing phase, and then we go to market. So you can still do that, and I think in some environments it's still the right thing to do. If you can't, you know, some environment you can't be that agile, you can't release that often. You need to plan, you know, things a lot more. So I think there is also, I've also seen customers focusing too much on the agile part where it wasn't really working. If you also look at the whole, you know, a lot of people are delivering for customers. If you have customers that push you to a scope, a date, and a price, you can do that, but ultimately you're still trying to fit an agile process within a waterfall environment. So you can still do that. You can still have more of a waterfall approach in saying, I'm going to define everything up front, I'm going to spend loads of time building it, and build the full bells and whistles. I think the big risk you're going to take, and the whole reason people have moved away from that, is that it takes a bit more time to get something to market, which sometimes is very useful to grab an early stage customer. It's very likely you're going to, you know, you haven't had that much feedback, so it's very likely you're going to build things that you might not have needed, and you haven't built stuff that you would have needed. And by the time it gets delivered, things might have moved on a little bit. So it is possible. It's unlikely based on your environment, but there are some exceptions where I would advocate it.
Okay. I was going to say to the audience, I think Richard's done a really good job of giving additional uses for the for MVPs. But if there are any other ideas out there, you know, I would encourage you to share them. I'd also say that you know, as an investor, I recently picked up a book which is called the Say Startup, and it's written by a Harvard Business School professor who specializes in entrepreneurship, Tom Eisenman, and he summarizes the kind of the things that trip startups up, you know, the risks into 4 headings. And I think you've covered them all in your talk. The first heading is demand risk, the risk that no one will want to buy your product. The second one, technology risk, the fact that the entrepreneur won't master the technology and so won't be able to deliver as easily as they thought. The third one is execution risk, the risk that the entrepreneurs can't get things done as easily as they thought. Again, execution risk is I would say a big one when it comes to investors thinking. And then the last one, the last heading is financing risk, the risk that you won't be able to raise enough money. And you know, it looks from what you said, Richard, like MVPs can help you with all 4 of these.
I think so. I mean, it's going to help. Obviously, it's going to be the only solution, but it's definitely going to help. Yes.
Another question has come in from Robert Hughes through LinkedIn. Is using a wireframe as a proof of concept a viable solution to demonstrate an app to secure pre-seed investment to build the MVP?
I think so. You know, you might have, I think anything that people can engage with is good, and people are more and more used to wireframes these days. I think that the different MVP or MVP construct offer different things, right? So the wireframe is probably really quick. You know, it's probably quicker and easier and cheaper compared to more like an MVP working product. really allows you to, really allows you to refine your UX and UI. It's probably a process that you want to apply either way. I think it doesn't allow you to demonstrate some of what we've been talking around, the execution risk. So the wireframe might be good as well for, sales. I mean, if you have a good trusted relationship with someone might be trusting you to deliver and might be able to get some early or letter of intent based on the wireframe. But I think the execution risk, which you said, Roberto, is a big risk in the startup. That's going to be difficult to demonstrate through wireframe. But maybe you don't need to demonstrate it. Maybe you've done. It's a bunch of different ways you can use. So you really need to apply it to your context. I think it's really. I guess the key message for me is you're going to have to convince people. Those people are going to need to trust you. And them saying they trust you is sometimes really different than them really trusting you. And I think when you're able to demonstrate by A plus B that it is going to be feasible, that you have people going to buy it, that you can deliver the solution, it goes a really long way. Whatever you're using to do that, to some extent, doesn't matter so much.
I think we talked earlier about the fact that you have to evaluate the situation that you are in, and you have to consider, how much competition do you have, and what do they have out there. But in general, I would say that yes, that you could use a wireframe to help you raise money, depending on the situation that you're in. Yeah. Okay. Well, it looks like we don't have any more questions. So, any last minute thoughts? Anything you'd like to add before we finish, Richard?
No, I mean, if anyone has asked questions looking at the recording or down the line, very happy to have a chat. If some of the people that have asked the question want to talk more about those topics, something, very happy to have a chat. So I think it's, if you disagree with what I've said and you think, no, my experience is very, very different, and even more want to have a chat and then understand, different people's point of view. So yeah, hopefully was useful. There's loads of area we could talk about that goes around that, but yeah, hopefully was useful to people. And if you have any question, you'll be able to find us.
Great. All right. Well, thanks very much. And
thanks to you.
I think yeah, we'll leave it there. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.
Thank you both very much. I have included Richard's LinkedIn profile in the comment section, so if people would like to get in touch with him, then we can. And I've also included a link to the Fresh Business Thinking follow-up page, which will include the full recording of the session and the supporting documents from Lerex Tech. Thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you again to Richard and Roberto.